We are recording.
All right. Again, my name is Dan Kinnahill, the library. I am a Pelican and a Laurel out of the Kingdom of the West. I live in the Principality of Awertha, which is modernly the state of Alaska. So this is our sign. It's how we know each other. I live here. It is. I've been in the SCA for just under half my life, for about 18 years. And I have run, I think I'm at like 17 or 18 events in those 18 years, give or take. And a number of those have been Kingdom events. I've run a number of Principality, Cornet. Awertha is unique in the West and possibly the known world in that we run Cornet and Investiture on the same weekend. So you win Saturday, you step up Sunday. It's a high speed event. So I've done a couple of those. And what I have really become very fond of doing in the SCA is trying out new ideas and seeing what I can do to kind of push the boundaries of, honestly, push the boundaries of the people close to me, because we all grow if we experience new things. And to kind of see what I can accomplish. Like that's always, like, ultimately it's always kind of a challenge to myself. Can I do the thing? Question mark. And sometimes that means that the thing blows up in my face. And sometimes it means it goes really well. And at this point, I think I'm sitting at like 66% really well, 33% blow up in the face, 1% it's a toss up, which, it's holding out pretty good. So that's me. Goals of the class. The goal of this is to encourage everybody out there to try something new. Largely what we're going to be focusing on is event planning, and looking at that kind of thing when we talk about a wild idea. But a lot of this, honestly, is probably applicable to similar ideas, right? Like, so one of the kind of wild ideas that wasn't my wild idea, but that I have been sort of swept up in and been having a lot of fun with, was Ula's wild idea, with Saga Saturday. And that, a lot of this, these lessons that I've got for you, or these suggestions, really, these are from my experience suggestions for you. They're not the be all and end all. It will apply to stuff like that, where you're just like, hey, I want to do this thing. It's kind of outside the box. How do I do that? How do I take it from, like, I had this weird idea driving home from work to, putting on a show at an event, putting on an event, putting on a TV show on the internet about Norse literature, like all kinds of good stuff. That's where the goal is, and that's kind of what I mean by a wild idea. As a note for this class, please feel free to interrupt me and ask questions. I've got kind of a general outline of what I want to talk about, but I haven't practiced this class yet, so it could take 10 minutes or it could take an hour and a half, and I'm really hoping that we'll hit somewhere in the middle of that. But please feel free to ask questions, comment with your own ideas, anything like that. Go for it. So the first thing I want to do is kind of go through the steps that I've got that I use in my head to kind of frame out how I want an event to happen, or how I want to build towards something. And then I'll talk a little bit about some tips that don't quite fit well in any one step. Step one is so you're driving home from an event. For me, the big wild idea that I've been working on the last few years is an upcoming Perfectly Period Feast, or Plausibly Period Feast, up here in Awertha. It was supposed to happen last year, and then we had a pandemic, and now it's theoretically happening in November, but it's all sort of fly by the seat of our pants, because God knows what's going to be going on with the pandemic in the summer, right? Like, this is all this perpetually. If nothing else, this is teaching me flexibility. I am learning about how to be a more flexible human being than I was before this, because if I was the person I was 5 years ago, there would have been a small implosion and Anchorage would be a little crater. So it's a growth opportunity. So for me, what kicked off this idea is I was coming home from PPF Burgundy, which was hosted in part by the fantastic Mistress Elsie down there, and at this beautiful Girl Scout camp. And I'm driving home, and I was just like blown away by this event, and I felt completely transported. I had a magnificent time, and I was just, this is amazing, and I want to do something like this for a period of history that I am super enthusiastic about, which is basically, so here's the thing, guys, if it has 4 years and four numbers in the date, it's late period. So I like early period. And then too early for me is if there's, again, 4 numbers in the date, but it's followed by a BCE. So 4 numbers BCE, that's a little too early. 4 numbers CE, that's a little too late. So I like that middle bit sweet spot. So I wanted to do an early period. I really enjoy 14th century is early period. Oh no, Elsie, but okay. So I really enjoy Northern European history, and I live in Owertha, which means Northern Europe and Alaska have quite a lot in common, temperature wise. And honestly, there's few places that you get to really explore the experience of life above, or not above in Anchorage. We're well below the Arctic Circle, but near the Arctic Circle with the daylight shifts and everything like that. That is an aspect of life in Northern Europe that you cannot experience in the lower 48, which is most of the rest of y'all. So that was the idea. So this first step, you've had this idea, this brainstorm, I'm going to do this feast. You got to define the idea, right? Like just starting out saying, I'm going to do this feast. Well, okay. Like, is this going to be an overnight thing, or is it going to be a one-day thing? Is this going to be, when I say early medieval Northern Europe, that is a lot of time and place. So, let's narrow it down. If you want to do a pot of arms at an event, are you going to focus on a specific tournament book? Are you going to try and recreate an exact tournament, or are you looking to recreate sort of the general tournament culture? Are you looking 13th century, 14th century? Like, where are we falling in this sort of broad band, this starting from a large idea and just we're starting to sort of winnow it down, define what exactly you want to do? That's my first step. My second step is, once I've kind of winnowed down to like, this is generally what I want. I generally want 10th century Northern Europe feast. Now it's time to start refining it. So talking to people, this is to me the most important thing of this, the most important lesson, if you're going to take anything away, is communication. You are never going to get people on board with your wild idea if you don't give them a little bit of something to vest into, right? So they need to buy into your idea. And the way that you can get buy-in, build that buy-in, is by going to them and saying, hey, I've had this really neat idea, I think. What do you think? How would you accomplish this? And like, ask for advice. There was a class I took in college on political communication. And one of the things that they really stress, so this was like, I wanted to be CJ Craig. So for people who've watched West Wing, like that was my life goal for a hot minute until I worked in campaign politics. Then I didn't want to anymore. Was that if you ask somebody to volunteer, they are more likely to volunteer than if you say, hey, I need some volunteers, anybody out there? But if I go to you directly, if I go to Claire Elena directly, and I say, hey, Claire Elena, I would really appreciate your expertise on this subject. Would you be willing to come help me? That encourages, that acknowledges her contribution. I start out by saying, I acknowledge you as knowing something about this subject. And now I'm putting myself out there and I'm saying, hey, can you come help me? And so you're more likely, that's, yes, that's exactly how it worked, Ula. So Ula said, that's how I roped you into Saga Saturday, direct communication. And that's exactly what happened. And she's like, hey, Kunahill, do you want to do this thing with me? And I was like, yes. It was that's basically exactly how that conversation went. But you want to start it, you want to get buy-in from people because you're going to need their help down the line. So you start by talking to people. You also want to kind of know your audience. right? So my initial thought with this was, hey, I'll do 10th century, early medieval England, right? Like that's my jam. If you want to talk, like within grabbing distance, right? I have 4 pounds of Old English poetry because I love it and it makes me very, very happy. And so I was like, first thought, 10th century England. Let's do like a Mercian feast. Let's really narrow this to central England. We're gonna have, like I've got all these visions. But the thing is, when you look at what's popular in my area in the SCA, in sort of on the West Coast, let's call the West Coast my area, because it belongs to me, obviously. The West, like it's not England that's popular. It tends to be early medieval Scandinavia, so the Viking Age, right? So if I wanted to get people enthusiastic about doing this early medieval feast and getting really nitty gritty in the research and really digging into all these ideas, I wasn't necessarily going to be able to build that community and build that buy-in by doing my thing. But, maybe the mountain can go to Muhammad once in a while and be like, okay, right? Like I will compromise. You want to come with me on this journey of early medieval, excuse me. I got a great comment down here. Hang on. Found my mouse. All right, Genevieve, I will respond to that in just a second. So, you've got this, I want to do early period. I want you to do a bunch of research and we're going to do this in as authentic a manner as possible. So that means, no Viking Barbie. We're going to do this and we're going to do it right. So you do it right with me and I will do Norse with you. So Genevieve, comment. One aspect that needs to be addressed if your idea will be an SCA event is that you need to have a group sponsor, kingdom, principality, barony, whatever. In the West, there's a lot of us that associate with interest groups rather than local groups. Not sure how PPFs address this. So what I did is I went to the principality and Principality Seneschal and the Prince and Princess and the Principality Exchequer and made my pitch to them and said, hey, this is what I want to do. Will the Principality of Ortha sponsor me in this? And yeah, exactly. As Elsie says, I think PPF Burgundy was sponsored by the Shire of Canale, if I remember correctly. No? West Kingdom?
The prior PPFs in the West were all sponsored by Kingdom. PPF Burgundy had a guild that we put together because we were doing some fundraising and we wanted to have all those financial bits in place, and it specifically sunsetted at the event with the idea that the money, any profit that we made would go to funding another PPF.
Yeah. So I'm not sure how guilds work in other kingdoms, but in the West, we had that opportunity. Other kingdoms, you want to do something like this, talk to your local group. If you don't have a local group that has the structure to support you in doing something like this, the logistical structure, talk to your kingdom. If you are lucky enough to live in a principality, talk to your principality, right? Kind of, you do want to talk to a group. Generally, we don't have individuals sponsoring SCA events, but you can sponsor if what you're looking to do isn't a whole event concept, then you can talk to, if you want to, you as an individual can sponsor something at an existing event. So if you want to do a tournament, you could sponsor the tournament at the event. Totally doable. But that was a great comment. Thank you very much, Genevieve. So we've talked about talking to people, talked about knowing your audience. You also at this point want to start managing at least your own expectations. So the hard lesson that I have learned is that nothing will ever be as amazing as your initial vision in your head, right? Like my initial vision in my head was that we were going to build a hall, we were going to do the whole thing. And then I was like, no, guys, fire planning, like the number of steps that would go, walk it back, take a breath. Yeah, Elsie's doing the money, right? Exactly that, money, right? It's cool, totally cool, except that there will be limitations to your grand vision, unless of course you win the lottery and then go wild, do what you want. But for the rest of us who don't live in states with lotteries or whatever, right? Like it's okay, start now to just like be realistic with yourself about what is achievable and what can be accomplished using mortal means, because we are all mortal. So step 3, find a team. and this is, I guess this is a good point to kind of mention one of my tips, which is start early. I give myself generally about 2 years. With PPF, I gave myself 2 years. We're now rolling into year 3. So, but 2 years is a nice time horizon. My old Shire, when I lived in Callantyre, held an event about every other year. And that's about how much planning time they gave themselves, was about 18 months. Up here, when we're holding local events, if even principality events, really you're looking more at like a 6 month to 4 month time, like planning horizon, kind of depending on the event. But give yourself, if you're going to have to build a lot of infrastructure, if you're going to have to do a lot of fundraising, give yourself as much time as possible and be realistic about it. Don't be like, well, in my head, I can do all of this in 3 months. Be real. Just make it, a lot of this is making an honest and realistic assessment of your own, what's achievable and your own like skills. So when you make that honest and realistic assessment, next step is to go find people who can help, because this is never going to be a one-person show. As much as I, control freak of the universe, would like to have everything run by one person, i.e. me, that is not actually a thing that's going to happen. Now, it is very good to have one person who's the main brain, right? Like all the information is coming and going to that one person, but you need to be willing to let everybody who's coming and giving you that information go out and do their work and respect that they've got their skills. There's a reason they're helping you with this. There's a reason you gave them whatever assignment or put them on whatever task. It's because you know that they can do it. So trust them to do it. Check in, right? Like was it a Russian guy who said it? Trust but verify. Was that, in my head, it's Potemkin, and I know that's wrong. Potemkin is Catherine the Great. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It does matter. Who was it? Trust but verify. Is that Reagan talking about the Russians? Gorbachev, thank you. Okay, it was a Russian person. And obviously it wasn't Potemkin. That was dumb. I think I was reading something about the Russian Revolution earlier, which doesn't have anything to do with Potemkin either, because he was, again, Catherine the Great. I don't know. Doesn't matter. Not the point. Point is, build a team. Start early. Start with your friends. Honestly, the people, if you're going to work on a project for 2 years, you want to be able to work with the person for 2 years. So this is not, I'm not saying like this project should be you and your household and only you and your household can talk about it. That's not the way to build a large project. And that's not going to be healthy for your group. And you're going to end up with a lot of negative feedback at the end. But, start by talking to your buddies. First thing I did was I went to Claire Elena and I said, hey, Claire Elena, you love to cook. You want to do a PPF with me and run the kitchen. I know that she's got a lot of experience running a kitchen. I know that she's very capable of this. This is something that she is perfectly competent doing. So if I say, hey, you want to run this kitchen, she's going to handle that and I can trust her with it. This wasn't like, you're my bestest buddy in the whole world and I want you to do me this favor. This was I know I can work with you for 2 years. We just finished being baronesses together and we didn't kill each other. So checking that requirement off. And 2, I can trust you to do this project. So start there, but then don't limit yourself to just that group of people. You want to reach out to other people. I'm a big fan of including as many different groups as possible, even if that does sometimes come back and bite me in the butt. So I advertised this and I said, hey, this is what I'm doing. And the offer was that if you join my event team and you contribute and participate, you get first bid at tickets. So we had a number of people who I didn't know terribly well, who reached out and who have been very, very useful in preparing and producing this event, if it ever gets to happen. So reach out, talk to people, you can do that thing I was talking about at the beginning where you go to individuals and you say, hey, I would really love it if you could help me with this specific aspect of the project. But there's going to be people you don't know who might have excellent skills that they can contribute. So if you put the call out and they come to you and they say, hey, I can do X, Y, and Z, can I help you? Take them on. If you're not really sure about their ability or whether they can really contribute, help give them a team to help. But like let people show you what their value is, because generally if you have faith in somebody's value and you tell them, look, I believe that you can do this thing, they will want to live up to that faith and they will want to live up to that belief, and they will tend to do better. Instead of if you say, hey, I'm not sure you can handle this, so here's a buddy to help you, then they'll be like, well, they don't trust me. But give people a chance to prove you right. But again, trust but verify. Communication. Communication is absolutely vital in all of this, incredibly vital. And I like my communication to be as transparent as possible. So with the PPF event, when we hold meetings, the meetings are held online. They're open to anybody to attend. And we maintain a transcript that we save on the Facebook page so people can go back and look at how decisions were made, and look at, what went into making those decisions. There haven't been any decisions made at this point. There was one decision made at this point that didn't involve group consensus, that it was just me making the executive decision. But I tend to like consensus and tend to do all right consensus building. So that's my preference. But if you are going to be the executive of your event, you also sometimes need to be comfortable making those executive decisions where you're just gonna be like, look, do we want yellow drapes or blue drapes? I like blue better. We're going with blue. Doesn't need to be a team conversation, but communicate to the person in charge of your drapes that you chose blue. Don't just assume they're going to psychically into it. That's the step 3, find a team. Step 4, getting organized. So this is a step that I have a lot of trouble with personally. I tend not to be a very organized person. Turns out that if I am doing a better job taking care of my mental health, I can be a lot more organized. But when I am completely all over the map scatterbrain, I don't do a great job. But timelines, milestones, shared documents are going to be your absolute lifesavers. So for the PPF project, what we did was we have an online Google Doc that's the PPF binder, and it has all the research in it. It has the menu in it. It has the timelines in it. It has the budget information in it. It has everything that I can think that anybody who's working on this project might need to know. Is held in that binder. It's accessible to anybody frankly, it's accessible to anybody on the internet, though only a limited number can edit it at a time. Like we've got closed down editing rights, but you want to lay out and then sort of when you lay out these milestones and timelines and everything, be honest about how much time it's going to take, and then make sure that you're hitting your milestones. Go back and evaluate. Did I reach the milestone for building benches? Did I reach my milestone for establishing a budget or for fundraising or whatever? Right? Like make sure that you're hitting your milestones. If you have to, as you work on it and you want to revisit it, I was revisiting it once a month. And we were holding monthly meetings and stuff. We've kind of gone a little bit quiet on that, mostly because of the pandemic and just all the other stuff that had to happen in the real world. And now, hopefully things are calming down a little bit and we can go back to regular meetings. But just checking in on those things, making sure that everything's organized, everything's where people can find the information, all that kind of stuff. That way, if there is a crisis, you're organized and all that information is easily findable and you're not hunting everywhere. So speaking of milestones and fundraising, let's talk about money. I put this down as step 5, but really it's a conversation that should be starting fairly early on. So all of these events, or if it's not an event, if you're gonna do something like a tournament, it's probably gonna cost you some money. Some things won't cost any or won't cost much, like Saga Saturday hasn't really, it's cost me paper, but beyond that, it's not really cost anything. But other projects, like a few years back, yes, Ula makes an excellent point. It has cost books, but those are books that I would probably have bought on my own anyway. So, right, like,
Really, you're just using it as an excuse to get the books you want, and you can justify it by saying it's for this X.
I am not going to disagree with that.
I can neither confirm nor deny that allegation.
I know you guys too well.
I don't know that I would have bought Bear Sarked Warrior, but I don't think I would have known about Bear Sarked Warrior. So, which is, if anybody's curious, it's a whole book tracking the evolution of the this particular female warrior motif, where the woman is bearing her chest. So it's apparently a motif that shows up in medieval literature, and so it's tracking that motif through a period of
Multiple
like,
examples, and it's
Yeah.
really kind of amazing.
It
Anyway.
is. It's turned out to be a really cool book. So not the point though. Point of the story though is, your event, your idea will likely cost money, and you'll need to find ways to raise that money because probably your local group won't be able to just fund it out of pocket. Some local groups will. My local group wouldn't have. And honestly, for something as specialized as what I'm doing, I would prefer to raise the money so that we're funding it off of site fees, off of other outside fundraising. There's theoretically going to be a auction at some point, though the person in charge of that has kind of dropped off the radar a little bit, which is fine. But that's the kind of thing you're going to want to start talking about early. We actually have a person specifically in charge of fundraising and money on the PPF team. It's Violet LeTaylor. She's been doing a really lovely job, and we're actually doing pretty well budget-wise, which pleases me greatly. There have been events that I have run in the past where you end up paying a lot of the budget out of your pocket, which is not something that I recommend. Like that ends up, I have found that really kind of kills my joy. Like if I end up having to pay for a lot of it out of pocket, it's just like it gets, you feel obligated to, and then it's not so much fun. So be realistic about the money, and then put in the work to fundraise or whatever, so that it's not just you paying for it. Because as it turns out, these things will get quite expensive. So step 6, stay motivated. This is where I tend to fall down a little bit. Elsie, were you raising your hand? I'm sorry. No, okay. So motivation tends to be one of the things that I am less great at, like self-motivation. I can keep other people motivated. That's no problem. I am happy to cheerlead as long as the day goes, whatever. But keeping myself on track, I tend to give myself like a 2-year clock. I can be excited about a thing for 2 years. But then after 2 years, it's sort of like, okay, I'm bored, which is why I'm so glad that officer positions tend to be 2 years long, because that means I can be enthusiastic about being Seneschal for exactly 2 years, and then I'm checking out. That has been kind of an exciting stress with this PPF event, is that since we've pushed past the 2-year mark, this is where I'm learning how to keep myself enthusiastic and motivated and focused. So keep yourself motivated and focused. Step 7, revisit your expectations. Just kind of keep on top of that. Like, be realistic with yourself. Am I hitting my milestones? Can I add? If I'm ahead of everything and I'm getting everything done and it's going really well, I can maybe add on to that. Or if things are falling behind, how can I, what shortcuts can I take that will not detract from the overall experience, but are still going to save me some time, maybe borrowing benches instead of building them, or instead of building tabletops, let's go to the discount furniture store and buy some old doors, right? And just plop the old doors on top and maybe cover the handle hole. Those kind of things, like be realistic, look at all that kind of stuff, revisit your expectations, stay organized, keep on top of, like for the PPF project, keep on top of the binder, keep on top of your budgeting, keep on top of all that kind of stuff. Just at this point, it's just this loop, right? Like you loop the staying motivated, revisiting expectations, and staying organized thing over and over again until you get to the day, and you give yourself like a 6-month countdown, right? Like, okay, we're 6 months out. Is everything ready to, is all of the things I wanted done at 6 months done? If it's not done, what can get ditched? What can get done? And then just start being real aggressive about those triage moments where you're just like, okay, can this be accomplished? honestly, no, it's not going to get accomplished then. Can I throw money at the problem? Do I have money to throw at the problem? No? All right. Well, there's not going to be a live band. Can I do this? That, like just start making those. A lot of this is just being very, very honest with yourself and being honest about the problem and saying, all right, do I think this is actually achievable? If I don't, it goes out the window. Or it can go in a pile for a future event. Like some of these ideas, you're like, all right, so the live band, we're not going to have live Mongolian throat singers at PPF 2021. So maybe in 5 years, I'll hold a Mongolian feast and we'll bring them back for that, right? Like I've made the contacts. We'll stay in touch, we'll revisit. So some of that kind of stuff can go into the in the future pile. Other stuff, just let it go into the firmament or tell somebody else about it for their wild idea. And then you get to, right, like you've done that, you've counted down your 6 months and now it's the day. So the week before the whatever, sleep, get good rest, eat real food, don't get drunk every night, like take real good care of yourself for the week leading up to the event, because that weekend will not be a time of good self-care. So I learned this lesson the hard way twice with Kingdom events. I ran a 12th night I was in Awertha and the hotel was in California. I ended up sleeping, I think 3 hours total that weekend and spending the rest of the time just like pacing the hotel, cleaning up after people, making sure things were done, making sure things were out of rooms, and just going. And that was kind of my fault because I didn't really build a good team. But by the end of that weekend, I was exhausted. I was crying. I was just a hot mess. And then I learned it again, though slightly less painfully, running Purgwartha, which was our Purgatorio Coronation and Awertha Investiture that we ran up here 2 years ago, I think 3 years ago. Goodness. So that one ended up getting a lot more sleep the week before, which was good. Did not involve traveling out of state, also good. And I had a great team, also good. But I also had a whole bunch of real needy people who needed kind of herding around site and various things transported various places, which they felt was the autocrat's responsibility, which is a choice that was made. And I wasn't grouchy enough to stand up to them. So that was a choice I made. But, by the end of that event, a lot fewer tears, a lot less like meltdown, but definitely very glad that there were things that I had just dumped off the to-do list in the lead up week that were just not going to get done. And I sacrificed those ideas on the altar of sleep. The sleep turns out to have been vitally important. So that is a major piece of advice for you. Be honest with yourself about how the day is and the weekend's going to go. Don't roll into the weekend expecting this magical experience that you're going to have. You're going to be working the entire weekend if it's a whole weekend event, or the whole day if it's a one-day event. It will start early, it will end late. It will be very stressful. There will probably be whole chunks of it that you simply don't remember. Like people have come up to me later about Purgwartha and been like, do you remember this? And I'm like, no, it's not. I haven't blacked it out like other people have with the like June Crown. It's a gift of love. That's a very good example, Elsie. Like I don't have missing chunks of that weekend, but I'm also like, there's definitely things people came up and told me and they were like, this is very important. You need to know it. And I was like, okay. 5 steps away, no memory of it. Also a good thing, by the way, in a pouch or a pocket or whatever, keep a notepad, because people will come up and tell you things. And if you write them down, you are more likely to remember them after you take those 5 steps. So we had a little bathroom trouble at the Purgwartha event that I had to be reminded of 3 times before I dealt with, because people would tell me as I was going this way and they were going that way, they'd be like, hey, don't forget the bathrooms. And I'd be like, cool, step. No memory. So anyway, also, so be honest with yourself about how your day is going to go, but let other people have their fun. So you don't need to, I have this really bad habit, especially when I'm really stressed out, that I need everybody to do exactly what I tell them, and they need to meet their, stage managers, right? You have marks on the stage. And when actors come in and come out, they need to hit their marks so that the lighting works, so that the sound works, so that everybody's practiced all works around them. And if the actor repeatedly doesn't hit their mark, the stage manager has a little nutty. So that's what I become when I am very stressed out on the day. I need everybody to hit their exact places on stage so that the lighting team that's been working hard, their work pays off, so that the prop masters and the prop team, their work pays off, so that everybody else's piece, because it's all one giant machine, right? And we're all just little cogs. And if one cog decides that it's going to have a little moment and it needs to stand stage front and shout at the audience, that little cog is going to get a Dremel. Turns out you can't do that to real people. Apparently you can do it to actors, but you can't do it to the rest of society. So, take a breath, let people have their fun. If something goes wrong, it's going to go wrong. And it's cool. Let it go. It's likely not going to be the end of the world. Sometimes it'll feel like it, but in 5 years, nobody will remember, and they'll just have this memory of a really lovely time. So that's okay. And as much as you are able to, just sort of take a few moments and look around and just like take in the sights and like let other people having fun, let that be your fun, right? Like sort of soak off that and then go deal with the bathrooms. Step 11, postmortem. So day after the event, probably not going to happen. It's usually a good idea maybe to sit down and just take a couple notes, then go back to bed. Couple days later, sit down. What worked? What didn't? Thank you very much, Harrogith, for joining us. I appreciate it. What worked? What didn't? Get feedback. Talk to your volunteers. Hey, what about this volunteer experience was positive for you? What do you think I could do better in the future? Talk to your attendees or send out a survey or something. Survey tends to work a little better because it gives them a chance to be anonymous. So get their feedback and then listen to their feedback. You don't necessarily have to take every piece of feedback, but listen to it and give it sort of an honest vetting. Like, all right, in the future, I could maybe not put the electrical tape crosses on the floor and point at them and cough at people. I respect that. That's a choice that you're making. Okay. Nothing will be perfect. That's all right. And then it's a good idea to thank your volunteers. You can do it in person. You can say, hey, thank you very, very much. I really appreciated your help. Even better, and you write a card. Like, hey, just send out cards after the event. Make sure you got everybody's addresses. Hey, thank you so much for helping out. I really appreciated this very specific, if you got the memory, right? This very specific thing you did to help me, that'll make them feel very good. And the best part of that is if they're feeling really good and they have that warm, now they've moved through the exhausted phase. Now they've got this warm feeling about you. If they feel warm about you and they remember, hey, this person took the time to write me a thank you note, I will help them again in the future, which is great because there are a limited number of volunteers in this organization. And if you burn your bridges with too many of them, nobody will ever help you again. That's a top tip there. So thank you, volunteers. And then, if you've got if there's going to be a future PPF or whatever, pass your notes on to the person in the future so that they can build off of what you've learned, because nothing's useful if you can't share that knowledge with somebody else. So those are my steps to get you through. And it's actually taken us just about 45 minutes to talk about all that. So I'll hit my tips. And then if you guys have any questions, let me know. If you don't, if you've got a bounce, that's also cool. We talked about starting early, talked about being flexible. Things are going to go wrong. Thank you very much, Astrith. It was lovely to have you. Things are going to go wrong. Roll with it. There's usually at that point nothing you can do. If it is going wrong in the moment, you're probably not going to stop it from going wrong, and you're just going to have to deal with the cleanup. This is when the toilets are freezing, or when they have frozen. When the pipes are frozen, you cannot unfreeze the pipes like that. It's going to be a little bit. Be prepared to be prepared, right? So talk out what's going to happen in an emergency. Like if we have to call 911, do we have somebody on site who's going to be in charge of directing the ambulance back here? If the pipes freeze, do we have a plan to provide potable water on site? And what can we do about toilets? Or do we need to just call the event? If our head chef gets called away because her daughter does remarkably well in a horse jumping competition and so cannot be there on the day, and then our backup chef chops off the end of her finger and has to go to the emergency room, what's your vision? How are you going to handle that? Turns out,
Resemble that remark at all.
what happens is the second chef goes to the closest possible human being, says, "You're in charge now," probably throw out the cucumbers, and then beetles away down and holding their finger like this and goes, "Hey, friend, I think I need to go to the emergency room," as blood is literally like squirting out the end of their finger. It was fine. I was fine. I only have a little scar. Build up to it. Don't start this kind of planning process by just jumping straight into the deep end, right? I made that mistake. I jumped straight into hosting a Kingdom event, and that was a lot. So if you want to host a Kingdom event, maybe start by getting on some event teams first. I thought I was fine because I've hosted some cornets at that point. Orwithan Cornet and Investiture and Kingdom 12th Night, West Kingdom 12th Night are two very different monsters, as I learned. Be open to suggestions, but also acknowledge that you don't have to take everybody's idea, right? Sometimes somebody's going to come up and be like, you know what would be an amazing addition to your event? If you translated everything into Middle French. Thank you very much for that lovely suggestion. You know what? I've got a great book on Middle French at home. I will take a look at it and see if we can build that into the timetable. And then later, when it doesn't happen, because who in God's name needs it in Middle French? Nobody hates themselves that much. You can just be like, look, ran out of time. And you haven't been rude or dismissive to the person bringing you the suggestion, but you also haven't taken the time to study French inflection. And the last bit is be aware of political capital. So this is going back to that Polycom class I took. Political capital is something that exists in every group of people. You build, this is what you like, there's a great Middle Eastern term, wasta. And wasta and political capital isn't quite the same thing, but it's political capital is something that you build by being useful to other people, by contributing to other people's projects. You build it through friendships, you build it through all these different ways, and then you can expend it to do something. So if I've got a huge favor I need to ask, like, hey, Carrie or Clara Elena, I really need you to help me move all of my crap up to my 40 pounds of like 40 boxes of books up to my apartment. Can you please come over on a hot day and help me out? And Clara Elena, bless her heart, totally did that. But like now I owe her a favor, right? So it's that balance and that give and take and all that kind of stuff. So know that, be aware of political capital. Figure it out. Yeah, functional fitness. It was functional fitness. My knees were so much better after I moved up here. So it is, be aware of it and expend it wisely. Don't blow all your political capital on one thing. Just take the time and sort of be smart about your choices. So that is everything I have for you. We have 3 minutes left in the hour. Does anybody have questions? I know I blazed right through that, and unfortunately I don't have a really good handout, though I'm happy to share with you the sort of broad note document that I made.
Yeah. So I just want to add to what Kunhild was saying about political capital. I think we all have in our circle or group of friends or households or whatever you want to call them, there are people that you will go to the ends of the earth for and don't really expect anything in return. And a lot of times, there are those things that we just do because it's someone that we really care about and want to do something for. And I think a lot of times when these big events come up, those are kind of the people we tap first. But Kunhild's also right. You don't want to run that well dry necessarily. But we all have those friends that I call them my 3 o'clock in the morning bail me out of jail phone call friends. So that's a lot of, I think, how some of these, like Catriona and I did June Crown 2019 up here in Awertha, and that was, if we hadn't had people, making sure that we were getting fed, or, that we could assign things to and know it would get done, that makes a big difference.
So I just wanted to make a comment, and that is, I just want to stress to anybody who will listen how important the crazy idea is. And I think for the West Kingdom, which is all I know, I'm sorry, we have 3 rains a year, and that's just there's a tendency for that to become a machine, and so events really start feeling the same. So the crazy idea, it's a small, maybe you have a small thing, during a kingdom that's just like, I'm going to have theme day over in my pavilion, come on over, or a big event. It's just super important to show people alternatives so they can break out of ruts.
That's an absolutely excellent point. Awertha we have a very bad habit up here of, okay, these are the 5 events that my barony is going to hold this year. This one's going to look like this. It's going to be held at this location. This one's going to look like this. It's going to be held at this location. It's going to be exactly, just a second, Seamus. It'll be exactly the same. So having these wild ideas, trying something new, and getting other people to try it with you is going to go a long way to help revitalize and ensure everybody's having fun at the event. And it will help you maintain member retention, because if members are excited about coming to new events, they will be more excited about coming to new events again, right? Like, you want to build that member, and it'll get new people excited, right? Like if a new person comes to the same event 5 times, right? But if they come to something and they're like, wow, that was really cool, I want to capture that feeling again, you're more likely to have them come back. Seamus, what did you have?
When I a lot of times plan events, there's something I learned in the military called BAMCIS, which is an acronym, BAMCIS. Have you ever heard of that before?
Nope.
Okay. So I find that useful. I was just kind of curious if you heard of it. Do you want me to tell you what they mean, or should I just move on?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so BAMCIS in civilian, I learned it from the military, so they have military speak for it, but in civilian speak, there are 6 steps you take when you do a plan. They're very broad, but the first step is brainstorm. Second step is what I call a range of research, like figure out what your questions are. Third step is go look at, complete, or BAM is make the research happen. So basically you go find the answers, which you might go back and forth on that a few times. Next one is complete the plan with that research you just did. Then you implement the plan, and then you supervise.
Cool.
And adjust it.
I was Googling as you were talking about it, and that is I like that. I'm going to add that to my notes. So if I ever do this again, I can talk about it, because that's a excellent, what did I just do?
And then another one is SMART goals, or smarter goals. Have you heard of those?
Nope.
So the idea behind those is when you have like a specific objective, say, right? You can, or a task or something, you can try to define it in roughly 1 sentence, but SMART is an acronym, of course, but is there your thing specific? Is it measurable? Is it attainable? Is it realistic? Is it timely? Timely meaning, is there a deadline?
Yep.
And then you can add the ER by putting an evaluation portion of some sort in there. And then R is to revise it based on that evaluation, so that next time it's better than you did the time before.
I like that. Those are both excellent acronyms. I've added both of them to my notes. Thank you very much.
And here's another one for you, Kunhild, because I teach my design thinking students this. It's called the launch cycle. Look, listen, and learn. Ask lots of questions. Understand the problem. In this case, would be understand the thing. Create a prototype, create a plan, highlight and fix anything within that, and then you launch it. So all very similar ideas and concepts in these 3 things, but for kids, it really works. The word launch, it helps them think through it.
I like that. There's all these. Thank you very much, both of you. I appreciate it. Do we have any other questions, or would you like to be free to go about your business? All right, I'm seeing nobody. So thank you all very much for coming. I hope that and I hope you all have a great afternoon.